Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Giggle, giggle.
This whole section made me giggle.
Oh, giggle, giggle. Cheeks blush, toes curl.
Swoon.
Yes, we are.
Oh my God.
We are smitten over here.
Yes, we definitely are smitten.
So, my goodness.
Yeah, and we are drinking coffee to go with our theme of being smitten.
That is true.
I know.
That is true. So,
Yeah.
we decided to do our pre-workout today with Romancing the Bean out in Burbank.
Yep.
It's a cute little small business coffee shop. The owner is Carrie Kroll. She works with only local and organic vendors and whatnot for her shop, and all the ingredients that she uses are very clean. And then also very cool, she won the Outstanding Small Business Woman Award back in 2018. So that's pretty cute.
I know. I love it. It's such a cute little vibe too, right on Magnolia, so it's in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
And it's got such a cute little vibe. The food
food looked great.
It looks so good. I don't know that I've ever actually eaten from there, but every time I walk in, I'm like, I wish I didn't eat breakfast this morning so that I could at least try one of these
maybe
things.
we should just highlight their food on here too at some point.
Yeah. Maybe next time we go, we'll just eat.
Yeah, we'll just eat. It's fine.
Promise we won't eat while we're talking, though, because that is one of my major pet peeves.
No, same.
And I'm
same.
like, ugh, the worst culprit. I do. But, all right. So, what did you get today?
I actually got a chocolate mint blended coffee. No real reason to that other than I like chocolate and I like mint, and it's hot out today.
It is so hot.
And it's been draining me, so I wanted something more cold rather than hot. And they had blended coffee drinks, which I feel like not a lot of little small business coffee shops like that have blended options. It's always unique flavors or whatever, but it's always just hot or ice, not blended. So
I can't remember the last time I had a blended coffee, and I didn't know they had it.
Yeah, it's super cool. And now it's like melted, so now it's just like cold coffee that tastes really good. So I like it. It's like a really thin milkshake right now. And it's ironic to me that we're drinking it out of a straw in a mug. Classy. What did you get?
I just got, for no reason other than I really just needed some coffee, a cold brew.
Lovely.
It is. Well, actually, it's so nice because it's not bitter, and a lot of cold brews have like a bitter aftertaste, and this does not. So I'm like thrilled right now.
Yay.
I'm in heaven.
Yay.
I also really needed caffeine, so I was like, what can I just get?
Yeah, this is actually my first coffee of the day. So
Seriously?
yeah.
I don't want to tell you what number this is.
I'm going to guess right now.
Okay.
4.
No, actually.
3?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, I was up at 6:30 this morning, so I find it necessary.
Totally. Of course.
I needed to be caffeinated to dive into these chapters.
Yeah.
So.
Well then, let's freaking dive, baby.
Oh my God. Okay. Holy crap.
Yeah. So starting with, we got chapters 16 through 20 today.
Yep.
Starting with 16, we learned that Alice has a family. And Alice, if we recall, is another maid throughout the Spring Court house. And she's like Feyre's, what is it called? Like, not assistant.
She's
but like
her
head maid, I guess we can say.
Yeah, there's a word for it that is escaping my brain.
Yeah,
but like
it's there.
Yeah,
it's
like
bubbling
we know what
right
it is.
Here.
I can see it in my head.
She's that. But we learned. I really like Alice too.
God,
so learning that she has a family, and also not really being told where that family is. Kind of makes you open up the question to where, okay, can other family members or other fairies related to another live in different courts? That's what it brought to me, because I always thought, okay, you were like born into the Spring Court or the Autumn Court, you had to stay there, sort of thing, and it was very sectioned off. But that question, or that her story kind of makes you question, can things be bigger than that? So I think that's cool.
No, I loved that. I loved getting a little like behind the scenes of her life, and you clearly know something is amiss because these children are no longer there. Feyre wonders whether or not they were there to begin with because of all the kids' books that she found in the library. So she was like, are those theirs? And where are they?
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, like what you were saying. It's the same thing, like where are they? Mm-hmm. What's going on here? You kind of,
Something doesn't seem right.
Something seems a little fishy. And so you get that kind of little nugget of information. And then Feyre decides to, like, go down to dinner. Mm-hmm. She goes and has this meal with Tamlin and Lucien, and she makes a comment about how, well, fairies can't lie. And Lucien just was like, dude, what?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, no, we can lie. I don't know what you have heard. And turns out, not only can fairies lie, but iron does nothing to them. The only thing that can actually do something to a fairy is the ash arrows or the ash tree, whatever. And Feyre's like, oh, so cool. Now I don't know what's been truth and what isn't true at this point. But I love the way Sarah writes, because as she's having these conversations, especially after Lucien leaves and then she's with Tamlin, she keeps saying, I could see the truth in his eyes. Like, I knew it was the truth. Mm-hmm. And so now you start understanding what she's seeing and also what she's feeling. And it's kind of interesting because now Tamlin's telling her a little bit about what happened with her family. And that he did glamour them. Yeah. And that they're safe. Mm-hmm. But he also gave them a veiled warning that should anything seem amiss, they run. Yeah. And Feyre believes them. Right. She fully believes that.
Yeah. I think that's so romantic of him to do. You know, I get it. She did kill Andres, so he's going to take her, and that whole story and everything. But he definitely didn't have to do all that. He didn't. He could have just glamoured them to where now the story is where Feyre had to call to take care of her great aunt, or I think it was. And they could have lived off like that. And then when said war comes and things come into the human realm, they wouldn't know of any warning, and they would just, you know, get fucked with that whole situation.
Exactly.
He didn't have to go ahead and do that.
No, he did not.
Yet he did. And so I think that still shows more character, who he is as a character and what he is feeling for Feyre at this point.
Yeah.
And seeing, you know, how he's trying to get the catch.
It's really cute to, like, read these chapters again, because I was just like, oh my god, this is like such a little budding romance. And you can see them tiptoeing around each other a little bit more now, and especially like him giving her back like the list of words that she had written down, and he was like, what was this, like, what were you trying to do? And she gets embarrassed. She doesn't want to tell him, and he doesn't push. He lets it go. And after admitting all this with her family and saying they're fine, Feyre finally feels like it might be safe for her to be like, I really just want to paint. Right. Like, can you get me paint supplies? And she finally asks for something she wants. Yeah. And when she thanks him, he just, like, smiles. Like a true smile.
How cute.
It was the cutest. And the fact that her, like, breath caught and she was like, it never happened with Isaac. I was like, oh my god. Yeah. Like, that is so romantic. Aww. And, like, you know, the budding stages of a romance are just, like, the sweetest thing, because you're just...
It's so sweet and innocent.
Yeah. Ish.
In said cases.
We will not be talking about that yet.
Right.
That comes in a few chapters. I think that's very soon. But yeah, so their dynamic is really sweet right now. Yeah. And she leaves it kind of on that note, and she goes up and goes to bed. And then she has this nightmare. And she has this nightmare about a woman, like, ripping her throat. And that's all she sees. She wakes up from the nightmare. She's all confused. Yeah. And when she gets out of her room, she hears, like, a commotion. And she goes out to see what's happening. And she sees Tamlin and Lucien come in with a blue fairy. Which was so sad. Like, this poor Fairy's bleeding, like clearly injured. Feyre rushes downstairs to see what's going on, and she sees that his wings are gone. This poor blue fairy's wings have been ripped from his back.
Yeah, pretty brutally.
Yeah, like intense.
Yeah, and he kept yelling out, "She took my wings, she took my wings," and it's still bringing up that question of she. Who is she?
Mm-hmm. That is definitely... Yeah,
you
don't know.
It was a pretty tough scene, and you know, I think I want to say first thing Feyre did was, you know, obviously one, hold on, like assessing the situation and whatnot, but then, you know, she doesn't know who this person is. It's another Fae, and she goes off to help him and guide him through essentially his death. But you know, just being there for him and whatnot. And it's not until a little bit later where her and Tamlin are talking about it, and she says, you know, she was there for him because she thinks that no one should die alone like that. She wouldn't want to be treated that way. So she, you know, took herself out of the situation, realized that this person, this thing is what's in need, and or they're in need right now. They're scared. If I can be of some guidance or whatever for them, I'm going to do so. Again, just speaking on how awesome she is as a person, you know, to be that selfless and she didn't put herself in danger this time, but she's more than willing to do so. You know,
exactly. Like you know how much she doesn't trust the Fae. You know how much she doesn't like them, and for her to sit there and hold this fairy's hand, who isn't even from the Spring Court, you find out he's from Summer Court, and to sit there and hold his hand and to tell him it's okay. To lie and say he'll have his wings again. And to really just comfort him, even though she is so distrustful, she's so wary. She put it all aside to just be there. And it was so sad. Every time I read that, I was like, oh my God, my heart. And at the end, when she offers to help bury him, Tamlin's like, no, I need to do it on my own. And you watch that image of him leaving, carrying this fairy, and just going into the woods, and it's clearly not his first time doing something like this. Like, it didn't feel like this was just a one-time thing. It felt like this has been something.
He felt comfortable doing it, but it was natural to him. Like you said, it wasn't his first time. And
it felt like he owed something to this fairy, and you don't know what that, like, we as readers know what's going on. We've already read the book, so we already know why he might feel this way. But you do kind of get an inkling that there is a reason why he feels this guilt and this weight of making sure that this fairy is comfortable in death too. But yeah, such a intense scene. But at that moment, you kind of know that their relationship has officially shifted. And it just keeps shifting. Because the next day, like, the three of them go for this ride. And they take the horses and they go to a glen. And the way she describes it, it's just so beautiful sounding. Like, I just want to, like, go sit in this grass with them. Like, I just imagine it being like, you know, the bouncy grass.
The soft bouncy grass.
And I'm just like, that sounds so lovely. Like, what a nice way to, like, get away from everything that happened the night before, to, like, enjoy time with them. I think Feyre finally makes her first joke. She, like, tells Tamlin that the Suriel told her that she should brush him and give him treats.
Give him pets, for being a beast.
And the guys love it. They're like, oh my God, look, you made a joke. And it's like the first time you see her getting comfortable with this dynamic. And it's just, it's so nice to watch her kind of come out of her shell a little bit. It was, it's definitely such a beautiful scene that she painted. And I loved how
Sarah wrote it in the way where Faye was saying that they had laid out a purple blanket, and just bottom line, the three of them going essentially on a picnic.
Yeah,
It's so freaking cute.
little picnic.
Yeah, and like how Farrah said that the purple blanket was out for them to lay on, but the grass was so soft that she felt it would be an insult to use a blanket to cover her from the grass and whatnot. So she wanted to stay in that, and just the way that she described, you know, how Sarah described like her looking at Tamlin, or how the sun hit Tamlin's like goldenness, and things like that. Just again, just paints it so beautiful for you to envision, you know.
Yeah, like I could see it in my head. I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful.
Definitely.
And then he takes her to this pool of starlight.
Yes.
Starlight, by the way. Yeah. And you're just like, okay. And I can picture this pool too. Like somehow, I don't know why, my brain knows what this looks like.
Yeah.
And it's so, you can see he's making an effort to show her things from his past, because he says this was his favorite spot when he was a child. And he kind of opens up now about Lucian, because Lucian did not handle the scene from the previous night at all very well. He threw up and then he left.
Right.
So Farrah's concerned. She's asking about him, and Tamlin finally discloses some of Lucian's past.
Yeah.
You find out that he's the youngest son of the Autumn Court.
And there's 7 brothers, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So he's the youngest of the 7 brothers. Didn't want anything to do with the becoming heir with the Autumn Court. And ironically, Autumn Court's rules is a little bit different. It's not the eldest son that is born into the hierarchy there. It's the strongest son. So Tamlin was saying that Lucian did everything and anything he could growing up that a potential heir would not do.
Exactly.
He didn't want to be a part of it. He had no interest in it. And the father, who we learn in the future, we do not like the Autumn Court. Yeah. You know, their look on mating and your partner is very strict. So if it wasn't high fae or anything like that, it wasn't going to happen. Fortunately or unfortunately, Lucian, wow. Unfortunately, Lucian fell in love with someone who was not high fae and who would not match the list that would be of his father to be approved of. And horribly so. The father ended up killing essentially his mate, having his 2 older brothers hold him back as he forced him to watch, which I could not imagine that kind of pain happening.
No.
And so from that, you know, Lucian said, fuck you.
Yep, I'm out. I'm out.
And then ended up leaving the Autumn Court, where then 3 of his brothers then came after him to kill him.
Yep.
And only one of them went back, because 2 of them died.
Yep.
Lucian killed one, and then Tamlin had killed the other. They had gone on to Spring Court territory. And by this time, Tamlin had just been made Spring Court High Lord, so he was able to do whatever the fuck he wanted.
Yeah,
so he went and saw that Lucian was, you know, in trouble, and went and helped and saved him there, and then it just, you know, blossomed their friendship, and then he became the emissary for the Spring Court.
Yeah.
But what a rough,
seriously
rough thing to go through. Poor Lucian.
To watch who you think might be your mate die in front of you is, I can't even imagine.
At the hand of your own family.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Your father did it. It's insane. So you find all this out, and then Tamlin asks Farrah how her family lost their fortune. And you find out that Farrah's father was very successful at what he did for a while.
Yeah.
But he put all of his money onto these 3 ships and sent these 3 ships out onto like the most difficult path on an ocean
Yeah.
you could journey, because he wanted to make this sail. And unfortunately, the ships got caught in a storm, and they didn't end up making it, and they lost everything.
Yeah.
And that's when the debt collectors came, and that's when her father was beaten.
Yeah.
And she reveals that for 2 years, almost, they were able to live with the money that the debt collectors had left them with. So they were able to get that little cottage. They were able to eat and survive.
Yeah.
And it was 14. She was 14 when she started hunting.
Yeah.
And you kind of get this whole little backstory about what that was like for her, which is very interesting. And at the end of this little beautiful exchange of getting to know you, Feyre realizes that she doesn't want to miss out on swimming in this beautiful body of starlight, I guess you'd call it. Is it a body of starlight? Is that what we're calling it?
Sure.
Sure. I mean,
It's either a body of beautiful starlight or with a body with the face of a beautiful man.
yeah. I mean, she could do both, because there's a beautiful man right in front of her.
Yes.
But this is, she like takes off her tunic, and she notices Tamlin checking her out. You all notice Tamlin checking her out, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay, Tam, like, whoo.
Yeah.
But she goes in the water, she swims in this beautiful lake, and just enjoys herself.
Yeah.
And on the ride back to Springcourt, her and Lucien have a conversation, and Lucien apologizes to her
Yeah.
for not being there for her when the surreal, when she went to go talk to him and the Naga came.
Yeah.
And he said, I hesitated.
Yeah. And within that hesitation, I broke my oath. Yeah.
And then he gifts her one of his knives and says, don't stab me in the back with it.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, because now we're getting apologies from almost everybody.
Yeah.
Like, now everybody's apologizing to everybody, and it seems
Yeah.
like we're on stable ground now.
Yeah.
And that's a first for both Feyre, and it's also clearly a first for Lucien. You can tell
Right.
he's not the kind to
Right.
sit and apologize about things.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is a beautiful, lovely day they have. They go back. Tamlin decides to show Feyre the gallery
Yeah.
that he has. And this is clearly a scene straight out of Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, it's just references.
Oh my god, and I'm so in love with it.
It really is.
It's so beautiful. The first time he shows it to her, and her reaction, and his reaction to her reaction.
yeah.
Oh my god.
How cute.
So cute. And he's just like, I didn't realize humans, and then he cut himself off.
Yeah.
But like, you know what he's gonna say.
Yeah.
And it's going both ways. She didn't realize fairies could be this nice, and he didn't realize humans could feel this way.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful to watch both of them like discover each other. But like, I want to know what was on these gallery walls.
You know,
Like, I want to see these pictures.
yeah.
Because
I
they
have
sound
no idea.
gorgeous.
I have no idea. You know, first time, as we were preparing for this episode and reading over, you know, what we needed to read, when it showed that, you know, that they walked into the gallery and all the frames and everything were there, for some reason, I don't know why, the first thought that came into my mind was if they were all pictures that Feyre had painted in the past,
Ooh.
or like if it was just a random thought that
Yeah.
but it came up that way. And I thought, you know, how if that were a scenario, like let's say we obviously don't know what those paintings are, what those paintings were on there, but you know, if it could be a possibility, if it was written in another way, that it could be paintings that she had been working on, or if she had been like, I don't know, secretly working on something within her room, then he found them and put them up, or just, you know,
Yeah.
theories like that. But again, like, it kind of opens up the question too, where it's like, is it similar to the paintings within the mural that was in the library itself?
Yeah.
You know, is it telling a story like that, or is it just regular, you know?
Yeah, because she mentions like some are still lifes, and then she says some are clearly like me and paint like me, but then there's others who I have never even imagined painting this way.
Yeah.
And you're like, I think about like Monet and Van Gogh, and you think about all, like, Dali, you think about all of them, and you're like, well, they're so different. So maybe that's the type of style. Maybe it's not just one thing. Maybe it's so many different styles.
And I love how she wrote it out where it was her saying that, yes, there's some artists that with the way that they wrote and their strokes and everything, that is their own language, and she could understand that language. But there was language that she couldn't understand of different techniques or mediums or whatnot that was being used, but she still found beauty in all of it. And I think that's what a big part of what art is to begin with. But it was really cool to see that. Then it also makes you think, well, if we're talking about human realm here, we know as humans what that artwork looked like. I mean, we have all the art museums, like you just named some of the greatest artists. We know what those pieces look like. Would that be different for Faye?
Yeah.
Like, is it the same kind of idea, just like slightly different in some ways, or like what does their original artwork look like?
I love that, because your brain can. I can think of so many things. I could probably spend like the rest of this whole episode talking about this, but it's so true. Because Faye can see things that humans can't. So what are they putting in their art that even Farrah probably can't even see?
Right.
Like, it's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, this gallery is amazing, apparently. And she starts painting on her own now. Yeah. And she doesn't show anyone. She keeps it to herself. But yeah, so now she's giving herself freedom to enjoy something. Yeah. And she does have another nightmare, though. Yeah. And this nightmare is super important. It is very important. Because not only is that woman there again.
Yeah, still that same woman from the nightmare before.
Yep. But now she says that she is being watched over by a shadow. And you're just like, oh.
Is it the same shadow as the shadows before? Question mark. Who or what is the shadow? Yes. Yeah. It's just cool.
Oh my God. Picking up so many things I did not see the first time reading this book. I'm like.
And I love how it's just referred to shadow. Yes. Like nothing else. It's just shadow here, one chapter, 7 chapters later, shadow here. 3 chapters later, shadow here. And it's just like it's so unexpected, but it's so shadow, you're gonna remember it.
Yep. So clearly she's still dealing with some like nightmarish issues. She's still not feeling completely safe, although she's still feeling, she says, weeks pass. Like she's gotten into a routine now. So clearly like she's feeling some stability at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she does catch herself.
Yes.
At one point she feels too stable, and that gets her very upset because she's forgotten, she says. Right.
And she gets into her little tantrum.
Such a good way to put that.
Of being upset that her family didn't really fight for her or didn't really do anything to stop her from being taken away for the rest of her life, and she just overall just gets upset that her family didn't do anything again, and so it's very funny how the family has really never done anything to support or to bring their appreciation to her, nor does she really know that she's loved really in that family, it kind of seems like. Yet the family has so much power over her well-being.
Oh my God, so much.
Like, I don't know. I couldn't imagine being in that situation, and all this time has passed and you're now moving on with your life, and they're glamored and they're moving on with their life, but still there seems to be nothing. And it really just feeds into her narrative, or her maybe her self-narrative of not really being loved by her family and whatnot. And
I know.
It's rough.
And she keeps saying, no one will remember me.
Yeah.
And that's like so heartbreaking, because she's worked so hard to save that family repeatedly.
Yeah.
And she will be forgotten, she says.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Like, as you think about that, that's such a human experience to feel like you might be forgotten if, like, by people.
Yeah.
And it's very well written, because it's like, yeah, that hits home for a lot of us. Because we all want to make our mark in life. We all want to be remembered by family, by friends, by whoever. And for her to feel that alone, to never be remembered, is devastating.
Yeah.
And as she's throwing this tantrum, she cuts her hands on the roses in the garden. And this is such a swoon scene for me, but Tamlin takes a palm one at a time and he kisses it.
Yeah.
He kisses her right palm and then he kisses her left palm. And she says that there is blood left over on his lips, but her palms have healed.
Yeah.
And I'm just like sitting there going, oh my God.
He's Rapunzel.
Like, I'm so just in love with that thing he did.
Yeah.
Like, I'm immediately just like, oh
right.
my God, that is so romantic.
It's a very, very cute romantic thing for him to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's just, and you're like, oh my God, he gets it. Like, he does. He gets it.
Yeah.
And it was a very beautiful moment that they shared. And you can, again, see things are changing.
Yeah.
Things are starting to shift.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, I have to say, though, when I read that he had the blood on his mouth, actually, from her hand.
Yep.
First thing, I'm like, ha, hot. Dude, so hot.
I'm not gonna deny that I actually felt the exact same way.
Yes.
You're just like, is there something wrong with me that I think that this is...
No.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Not at all.
So at least we're in the same boat.
I think everyone who's read this whole series
100%.
We're deep in that boat.
We're deep in that. There are a lot of things here, guys.
It's funny.
But yeah, the next day, she takes herself on a little stroll, and she hears someone following her. So she sets up a little trap, and sure enough, she ensnares the High Lord, which you're just like, imagine this like small human person who apparently is clever enough to trap one of the most powerful Fae. Like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like, I'm here for it. But I also love that moment where he's like upside down hanging, and now all of a sudden it's Spider-Man all over again.
Right.
And you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And she's like running her hands down his hair, and she's like, I'm like, dude, this is so cute.
Yeah.
And also it did kind of remind me of, again, going back to Beauty and the Beast, but when they are doing that little montage of the two of them getting close and they're like having snowball fights and she hits him in the face, and I'm like, oh my God, this is literally just a montage of them
cute.
falling for each other. But she has him trapped up there until he decides to cut himself loose and he frees himself. And he starts talking to her. He opens up to her for the first time, really, about himself.
Yeah.
And how he never wanted to be High Lord. He wanted to be a warrior. He wanted to fight. And that's what he was prepared to do. And he goes on to explain that his family was murdered, and so there was no one really left but him to take this job. And so it fell on him. And she starts asking him questions about marriage and the mating bond, which I'm glad she did, because I was like, reading this, I was like, I don't know what... This was like my first high fantasy book, so I was like, is this a thing?
Yeah.
Because like, what? But then he's talking about it snapping into place, and you're like, so it's not there all the time?
Right.
I'm confused.
Yeah.
But you learn that Fae can get married with or without a mating bond. And that's what a lot of Fae ended up doing. His parents were mates.
Yeah.
And you find out that his mom did love his dad way more than his dad cared for his mom. His dad was very much about the power of everything. And you find out the mating bond isn't something you can avoid. Yeah. It's something that happens within each Fae to each other. And that's interesting. It's an interesting concept that you learn about.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah, definitely. I love the idea of a bond that you have no control of, rather than just the idea of marriage within the Fae. Like, there's no controlling it. There's no getting out of it. It's your partner is your partner, and and that's where it settles. And I really do like that. It makes me wonder for like Fae growing up, you know, how were they told about the bonds and what was that outlook looking like, you know, because like us as humans growing up in the times that we did, you know, I'm sure there's certain things that, you know, were expected to come from within like marriage or partners and whatnot. What would that have looked like again for the Fae? You know, what was their societal norms with marriage and with the bond or anything like that? Were they told to lean into it and find your mate, or is it kind of like Who hockey where, you know, it doesn't, you know, don't worry about it sort of thing?
Interesting.
And how does that affect them, you know, growing up? And specifically, how did that affect Tamlin growing up? If we do know within Tamlin's parents, you know, the mom was more in love with the dad than he was her, and he was more obsessed with the power and everything, you know, how did that shape Tamlin to who he is today, and what will become to know of him within the rest of the series? And I think, knowing what we know, it does a pretty big impact.
You do realize how important this mating bond is the further the series goes. It's definitely like one of those things that you're like, oh. And it's interesting because, like, wondering how they're brought up is such a fascinating thing, because you also learn that Fae don't really become adults until they're in their 70s. As that's what Alice mentioned, and I was like, what are we talking about here?
Right.
I mean, granted, Tamlin's over 500 years old, and so you're like, okay, but like, when do you learn these things? Like, when do you like are old enough to hear these stories, you know? But I don't want to like give too much away, because like knowing what we know in the next few books about like how other people are brought up, you're just like, oh, okay, I see how important this thing is. This thing is very important. But after the whole conversation Tamlin has, he takes her, they like start walking, and she starts noticing like all of these like fires that are lit, and she's like, what's going on? And he says that it's Calanmai, which is fire night, and also a word that was very difficult to pronounce.
Such a cool name, though.
Such a cool name. Love the name. And you learn that within Fire Night there is a ritual that happens that basically provides magic for the next year in these realms. And we also learn that Feyre is not invited. She's not allowed whatsoever. To be there. And as they return back to the manor, she kind of wants to press the issue, but she says that she hears a silence, but this silence is the type of silence that means there's something there. And I thought that was a really cool way to describe silence.
That is.
Like, okay. Because there's that silence where, like, it's an awkward silence, an uncomfortable silence. But a silence that something is present.
It makes the hair on your neck raise.
It's so interesting. So basically Tamlin's like freaking out. He's like, you need to go hide. So she does. And then Tamlin and Lucien start talking to an invisible thing, Feyre says.
And it ends up being the Ator. And the Ator for her is again one of those scarier creatures, especially like how we just said with the silence being so loud, essentially. It's definitely one of those, scarier creatures. And it's funny how she then decides to paint it when she has no idea what it looks like. So it's like that this thing has such a sense of horror to it that it still comes up in your mind without, like, it's so powerful and it's so horrific that it doesn't need to present itself to
Yeah.
you. You just know, you know.
Yeah, I loved that. And she said that way, like, within its voice, she could hear the screams of humans.
Right.
And I'm like, oh my God, to, like, hear a voice, but, like, within it hear something else. That must be terrifying, especially when she sees nothing.
Right.
Like, she's not seeing anything while they're
Yeah.
having this conversation.
Yeah.
And she also, like, I'm jumping ahead of the conversation, but she hears, like, the leathery boom of wings. But she sees there is nothing, but she
Right.
can hear leathery boom of wings.
Yeah.
Which you're like,
What does that mean?
what exactly, what does that mean?
Yeah, and after it leaving, she's just like, what
Yeah.
the fuck is
And
going on?
this Ator decides to drop, like, some serious warnings to Tamlin and Lucian, like some serious threats
Yeah.
about a she again. There's still this she that keeps being brought up, and basically threatening and reminding Tamlin and Lucian of their place.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting. You don't know exactly yet what's going on, but you will.
Yeah.
We promise. Soon to come, you will find out everything you need to know.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah.
Yeah, and then we cut back with her back at Cal and Mai.
Oh yeah, the night.
Yeah, so Farah does end up sneaking out.
Even after Tamlin, like, basically was like, go to your room, lock your door,
Yeah.
and don't come out. And he gave
Yeah.
her very strict orders, which,
Yeah.
to be fair, was the first time he did give her strict orders. So it's kind of like, girl, you're breaking the first rule he ever
Right.
gave you.
Right.
Okay.
But I support it.
I
It's
do
fine.
support it. Oh, and also the fact that she kept hearing a voice saying go.
Yes.
Go.
Go to
Okay.
Cal and Mai. Yeah.
So
Okay.
my theory-ridden brain, whose voice was telling her to go?
Yeah. Because she doesn't hear voices
No,
other than
she
the
doesn't.
Ator and those things that those,
yeah.
but nothing within herself.
And
internally.
it was an internal, because it was in italics, so it was an internal voice she was hearing, and it wasn't described as her voice. It was the voice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. Spoiler, was that Rhysand? Because
Yeah.
holy mother effing shit.
Yeah.
I'm dead.
I love that theory.
I'm dead.
I'm gonna go with it.
Yep, me
I'm
too.
rolling with it.
Oh my God.
That was Reese. And so we get to the point where she does listen to this voice.
Yes, she does.
And she goes to Cal and Mai, and it becomes pretty obvious that she's human. Pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And 3 fairy brothers, I think they were, went ahead and started circling Farah, you know, kind of taunting her and,
Yep.
you know, wanting to play with a human, you know, that night. You
Not
know.
a good play either.
No.
This was not a good play.
It was not a nice play. Yeah, and was very, just think Twilight when Bella's in the back and all
Oh,
those
yes.
dudes are trying to
Oh my
come up to
God,
her.
what a good pull right
Yeah,
there.
and Edward Cullen swoops up with his car.
Guys.
Think that, but Feyre and 3 dudes.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden,
She gets pushed.
she gets pushed, and then she meets someone with big, broad, warm
Warm
hands
hands.
on,
Oh my God, I'm
I think
dying.
it was her shoulders.
And he says,
He says, "There you are. I've been I've been looking for you."
I'm dead. I'm done. I'm done. Just kill me.
Clearly, by our reactions,
Oh my God.
this is Rhysand. It's Rhysand. We don't, you
don't
don't
know who
know
this is yet.
the importance of why we're freaking out right now, but
Oh, God.
it's a big fucking thing.
Yeah. There you
And
are.
yeah, and she says whatever she says back to him. He says, what does he say to?
No, so he says, "But there you are. I've been looking for you." And then he says to the guys,
Yes.
"Thank you for finding her
Yes,
for me."
yes.
And he puts his arm around her.
Yeah.
And he, the last thing he says is, "Enjoy your night," or something like
Yeah.
that. And then Sarah writes, there was clearly a bite to his voice.
Yeah.
And it was a dismissal.
Yeah.
And you can tell that these 3 are terrified of
Yeah.
him. Like,
Yeah.
absolutely terrified. And you're like, who is this dude?
Right.
I don't understand why he's so powerful, but clearly he's powerful. And then Farrah turns around and she describes him as
the most beautiful man she's ever seen.
My God. And then the end. Holy shit. I am... Oh, what an introduction to a fucking character, dude. I'm like dead. Yeah. I'm like probably blushing.
You are.
I am.
Yeah. It's okay. I'm getting hot in here too.
Oh, I've never loved a fictional character as much as I do. And
100%.
Oh my God. All right. We're spoiling everything right now, but
That's
too bad for you guys.
We did say spoilers.
Yes, we did. Holy mother. I loved rereading this. I just, first of all, just like the falling in love thing, loved it, thought it was adorable. Obviously the introduction of Reese, amazing.
Yeah.
But it really got me thinking, and again, credit to my sister for helping me talk through this, but like during this whole time of like falling in love, it was like Farrah also falling in love with like what she likes to do again, and kind of falling in love with who she, like relearning who she is.
Right.
So again, every self-discovery, finding herself, loving herself. And I was like, okay, so how have we gone on our journey of self-love? Yeah. Like not just as, I guess, as trainers and like through fitness, but also in our lives too. Like, I think we've all had those points where we felt kind of what Farrah felt and like didn't really know what we wanted, didn't know about ourselves, didn't know really anything. So I guess what has your self-love journey been?
It's been a roller coaster. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be very negative and very depressed. I did not have really any ounce of self-love, not really any ounce of self-confidence, and it took a big impact on so much, if not everything in my life. It affected relationships, it affected friendships, relationship with friends, relationship with partners, with family members, you know. It was just not a good time, and of course, most importantly, relationship with myself. I was hands down the meanest person to myself.
Oh my God, yep.
As we do tend to be. And, you know, I will give a lot of the credit to my partner for kind of being patient with me in those times to help me rediscover who I was and what I was wanting to become. And, you know, it was a long journey and it was a hard journey, but essentially, you know, there was a point where I had to just take time to myself and really just sit with myself. And it was a time where I was forced to only be with myself. And I there was no person that I could go ahead and turn back to or lean on and put all my shit onto them. It was more so, you know, no, look in the mirror. This is who you are. This is what we're working with. If we need to fix anything, if we don't like something, we're going to do it right now, sort of situation. And there was a time where, you know, I was forced to sit with all of that. I'm not saying I'm friggin' it's all healed. Oh God, no. But it's improved so much. But yeah, it was a interesting journey, and the things that honestly helped me the most within discovering self-love and acceptance and confidence and appreciation within myself was one, turning around the verbal talk that I would say to myself, and two would be physical movement, whether it was lifting in the gym, which obviously has helped in so many different areas, but also things like just dancing and going to dance class, or just being in my room alone, blasting music and just dancing and letting whatever I wanted to come out. And I found that gave me the most sense of confidence within myself, and within that confidence came the self-love came easier because I had that confidence within myself. I knew that, okay, if I'm, you know, no matter what my life looks like in the future, in reality it's just me. It's just me and me.
Yep.
Every single day, 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one of those harder pills to swallow, but as soon as it was swallowed, it was like, all right, we're gonna have some fun with this. You know, it is just us. And now I used to be I hated being alone. Now I'm alone a good like 70% of the time, 80%, and I love it. I love it. If anything, I want more of it. But yeah, movement and self-talk, internal dialogue to yourself was the two biggest things that helped me the most. Yeah. And falling in love with the process of, if we're talking more gym specific right now, like definitely falling in love with the process helps reach the end destination goal a little bit easier. But then again, we know that's not the main idea here, that the end destination is not the point of this. It's the journey within between. And falling in love with that process and everything just made everything connect in so many different aspects in my life to all kind of come together and be like, this is life. This is it.
It's right here. Oh, that's so... I can relate to everything you said. Like, I've struggled with self-love my whole life. Like, literally, I think within the last few years, it's really finally, like, I've finally turned a corner. But, oh my gosh, between just internal self-love, body dysmorphia, like all my eating disorder stuff, like, there has never been, I've never just sat with me. Like, it was always one of those things where I wanted to be as far away from myself as I could. And that's I think about the things I used to say to myself, and it makes me so sad because I was so mean. And I was so mean for so long that it became just like immediate. Like that was my immediate reaction, was either something was always my fault, it was because of the way that I looked, it was because of this, that, the other thing, it was always on me. The blame was always me. And I started doing a thing a few years ago where I started doing a lot of inner child healing and talking to baby Haley, and that has changed my whole life because I think of her and I literally want to cry. Like, I'm probably going to get emotional talking about it because I see her and she's just so innocent and small and doesn't know anything. And I was so mean to that version of myself because I internalized all these things happening around me. Like, I was bullied a lot at school, and I held on to a lot of that shit for so fucking long. And yes, part of me wishes I could go back and be like, forgive Haley, let go, release, all that. And part of me is grateful that I held on to it for as long as it did, because it taught me so much. And then I, like, think about that, and I think about all the work that I did, and I think about just changing, like you said, language. And a therapist a couple years ago gave me it ended up being the most difficult homework assignment I've ever had to do, where she asked me to go look in a mirror and stare at myself and tell myself, I love you. And she was like, I want you to do it 3 times. And do not break eye contact. Keep staring at yourself. And I would like you to do it 3 times. And I went to the mirror and I looked at myself and I burst into fucking tears because I could not tell myself those words. Like, I physically could not get them out of my mouth. And that breaks my heart, because I think now, like, every morning I wake up and I say, good morning, Haley, I love you. Like, and it's an immediate thing I do, is immediately I just go, I love you. Like, I don't question it anymore. But I think back to that first time I ever said those words to myself and how hard it was. And it's just, it's just so fascinating to me to look at that version versus who I am today and all the work I've done, because I've done so much work. I've done so much work, and I'm grateful for all the work I've done, but it has not been easy to do any of this. I've had to relearn everything. Language was the first thing I had to relearn. I also had to learn how to sit with myself too, because I didn't like being alone either. I didn't like sitting by myself and feeling all the things I felt, and sitting with that discomfort was just so unbearable. And now I live by myself, and I'm like, fuck, man, I'm good. I am good. But it's beautiful. It's a beautifully awful journey, I think is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
And I'm not perfect either. I'm not healed by any stretch of the imagination. Like, my body dysmorphia still flares. I still have times where I look in the mirror and see something that's not there. My eating disorder's still there. It's not what it used to be, but I still have voices that tell me things. Not schizophrenic by any stretch of the imagination. That sounds so bad, but I still have like those thoughts, and it's never going to go away. They're always going to be there, and that's okay, because now I know how to sit with them. And now I have tools. I can journal, I can meditate, I can go for a run. Running saved my life. Like, if there was one thing that ever changed for me, it was the minute I started running. Like, that changed everything. It's where I found confidence. Like, I found confidence in running to a point where, like, my run club, when I run with them, they're always like, oh, Haley, like, she's amazing. She knows exactly where we're going. She knows she'll push us. She'll do all this. And I do. And it never even was a question. It was always in my nature to be that when I ran. And as someone who never ran a day in her life as a kid, it's amazing that this is what I found that does it. And becoming a trainer gave me tremendous confidence. Because it was the minute I got my first client, I think I was so scared that I was going to be bad at it. And I was like, oh my God. But going into the gym every day and like my therapist is funny, because she always is like, Haley, you are the most you version when you're training your clients. And I'm like, you're not wrong. Like, I am fully me when I train. And that's interesting, because it was never my life path to be a trainer. I never thought that's what I'd become. What was your thorn and what was your rose for this week?
Okay, well, rose, 100% shadow. And being introduced to, quote unquote, the most beautiful man on earth.
Oh God, yes.
Thorn, man, it's a tough one. I would have to say Thorn would be the fairy from the summer court. That whole scene, that was rough. Definitely that. What about you?
Like, what can I say that you didn't just say? That's different. I guess my rose, aside from Shadow Daddy, and that whole thing, is the budding relationship between Tamlin and Feyre. Like, I forgot how cute it really was. And I love it. I am loving it. I really did not think I would, and I do. And my thorn, I don't know. I kind of probably have to agree with you on that poor blue fairy. The whole scene destroyed me. It was so devastating. Oh my God, what another terribly sad way to end this. So here we go, just a downer note.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I would say if I had to choose another one, my second rose would be the scene of Tamlin and Feyre at the pool, and then the thorn would have to be learning about Lucian's past, especially with the maid.
My God, you have so many good ones today. I love that. No, I love this. That's a really good one too. I forgot about that whole thing. All right, well,
how about this? How about you guys let us know what your Rose and what your thorn was for the week for chapters 16 through 20, you can go ahead and email us at brewsbooksbarbells@gmail.com.
Yep.
Or let us know on our Instagram, brewsbooksbarbells.
Yep.
Let your friends know. Anyone who's read the series, pass it along to them. We'd love to continue conversation about all of this. We love it, clearly.
We oh my god. We're moving on to some juicy stuff now.
Yeah, we're
getting good.
We're getting to the good shit.
Oh my god, I'm so excited. All right, well, we will see you next week.
See you.
Bye.
Adios.